Let's begin micro lesson 2.3, managing flexible assessment pathways. And again, this is our third of three that will follow this pattern all throughout the Institute. So in this particular micro lesson, we're going to look at strategies for personalizing feedback without creating great amounts of work for ourselves. We'll look at ways to collect feedback from students. So we'll give some, we'll get some, and then we will review settings. Again, it's surprising how big of an impact assessment settings or settings in general can have on how flexible our courses can be, or how well our courses support flexible course experiences. So we'll be proactive, we'll create feedback loops for ourselves and our students, and hopefully we'll improve the results. We'll go through a bunch of strategies again, and then we will start an activity. So some of you might be wondering, what is this mumbo jumbo you're talking about, Kevin, where I can customize feedback and not create additional workload for myself? Well, there are different ways we can do that. Depending on how consistent some of the feedback pieces are, you can use written feedback snippets. And so I have a library that I usually begin with the first paper and keep building over time. If I have the same assignment from semester to semester, I can start with a library of snippets that I've used in the past. But basically, you're looking at those comments that you have to type every so often, like, please show how you derive the solution for each problem, or please use paragraph breaks when you start each new idea or answer each question. It's difficult to read a paragraph that covers a page and a half. And that is something that I copy and paste more often than I would like. Students turning in a one-page essay, and it's literally a one paragraph on one page, covering the entire page. So over time, you end up with other snippets that aren't related to logistics, but they're related to the content of your course. And so, hey, I really like that you use multiple sources. So you can have some that are praise and some that are encouraging students to make adjustments and improvements. When you use a rubric, then you can do that both in a learning management system. So you can use a built-in rubric and just click the cells or the criteria that match how well students performed, or you can use a PDF or Word file if that works better for you. And I always like to include some written feedback with my rubrics so students can see how they did on each thing, but have examples. So in that case, I will copy and paste a sentence maybe right from their essay so that they see what is evidence of something or what is evidence of something being missing. So we want them to know how they can improve next time around. And then some instructors, and there's some emerging literature to support this, create screencast videos, and they do a think aloud feedback session with each student's assignment, whether that be a project, an essay, math or science problem sets, lab notes, or reactions to video of a student performing a task, like giving a monologue or giving a presentation in German for business purposes. So whatever the case may be, creating a screencast is a way to just basically give that student feedback as if they were sitting right in front of you. You can restrict yourself to a certain number of minutes. You can highlight the different parts of their assignment as you're talking about it. And then they have a video file instead of a block of text to use as a way to respond to their work. There is some evidence that shows that students respond positively to video-based feedback and will even incorporate the suggestions more frequently, at least in those two studies that I found, than they would for text-based feedback. But I would say 2 studies is not enough to call it a conclusive, strong evidence. And I hope my instructional design friends in the chat will pop in anything you've heard or read about the concept. The other idea is, in terms of giving consistent feedback, there's also the idea of giving equivalent feedback. So we have this mix of students, Lalita brought it up. How do I have students in the room and students who are on Zoom participating in activities during a class session? So spoken feedback, like verbal feedback for in-person and real-time remote learners, might be recorded verbal feedback for asynchronous learners. And then the remote and asynchronous feedback could be audio or video, depending on your setup. And there's also the situation where you may have to do a mixed format feedback, and you may have to use different media to give feedback at different times. For example, live verbal feedback for in-person learners, written feedback in the chat for real-time remote learners, written feedback in a Google Doc or a discussion forum for asynchronous learners. Obviously, you want to try to make the quality of the feedback the same in each environment. And I'm a really strong proponent of trying to use the same way to give feedback to everybody, so that you're not having to juggle and worrying about if you forgot some students. Thinking through, but there may be cases where you have to give feedback in different formats to different groups of students in some cases. So the idea that we also want to collect feedback from our students is not new, but we can ask students not only the normal questions. Janae talked about an exit ticket earlier in the chat, and I piped in that 1 minute paper could be the exit ticket. And online, I call it a 1 minute thread. And so you can ask, what was the clearest thing from today's mini lecture? What was the muddiest or least clear thing from today's mini lecture? What questions do you still have? But you can also ask questions about the course flexibility each week, such as, how well did the course flexibility support you today? What can I, as the teacher, do differently to support your learning? What can you do differently as a student to support your own learning in this flexible course environment? So we can use these student feedback loops to check in with them, not only about how well they're doing in the course, but how well the flexible course experience is working for them. And so we can do the same thing with surveys. Some people do surveys, let's say every 2, 3, or 4 weeks, maybe once a month during a semester, finding out what types of choices students are making in terms of the modality they're choosing for participation, what's working for them, how you can support them and how they can support themselves. Or some people just do one informal mid-semester evaluation. Don't want to wait all the way to the end of the semester to find out that students really would have liked if you would have created a, let's say, like Troy pointed out from Monterey Bay. Kevin, would you make a one page that's got all the links to all the activities and all the videos and all the slides, so we don't have to comb through the entire course? It's a great idea. And I started it over the midnight hour. So it's on its way. But that's the type of thing that a mid-semester evaluation could generate for you. And sometimes it's not hard to do. Sometimes you can discuss it with your students and say, I can't do exactly that, but I can get you halfway there. So assessment settings, and we can look at some of the settings related to different aspects of the assessment experience using technology. Logistics settings, the learner experience, grading, and the learning workflow are the different types of settings that we'll look at here. So with respect to logistics, for a quiz, you have the quiz type, and also when the assessment's going to open or close or be due. The assignments, you may also change up the scoring strategy, basically displays grade as points or a percent or complete or incomplete. Again, some of those might map to some of those minimal grading concepts or different grading structures. And then discussions. If you use discussions as a way to assess learning, some may be graded, some may be ungraded, but having date ranges for when you will score them so students don't expect to get a score when they answer their colleagues on the last day of class. How you score the discussions, let students know. Are you counting the number of posts they provide? Are you just adding up the number of points they earn for their original post and each reply that they submit? Who can rate the post? Because some instructors allow students to provide scores to each other as a way to give feedback. And there's more. When we get to the learner experience, what students can and cannot do in quizzes, it might be the number of attempts they get. We saw in the chat, somebody gives unlimited number of attempts for the practice quizzes, allowing students to skip a question and come back. So if you're displaying the questions one at a time, it's an accessibility strategy as well to make sure you do not lock the questions after answering. Students with attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder may need to bounce around among the questions. And if you force them to answer them one at a time and not be able to go back, you may be creating stress and challenge for certain groups of students. What are the review options? What can students see and when? In terms of the right answers, or at least whether or not they got the answers right or wrong, so they can learn from the quiz results and that feedback that we discussed earlier in the session. And adding the quiz to the calendar. Some learning management systems do that automatically, others do not. So making sure students can see when things are coming up. And I'm a big fan of also adding things to the calendar before the due date, like prepare for a quiz or start your essay that's due on Friday, start it on Monday, so that students start thinking about not just due dates, but start dates and milestone dates. For assignments, the ability to resubmit, what they can submit, the number of files they can submit, whether or not it's peer review. So you can see that the different settings allow us to modify the different aspects of flexibility. For grading, again, we can look at the different aspects of the quiz types, the scoring strategies and such. And then the workflow. And this one's pretty easy. If we want to help students monitor their progress, then we can use things like activity completion markers so students can see a check mark when they've completed a certain activity or assignment or assessment. So we've got about 15 minutes left. I'm going to put some links in the chat for you all so that you can decide which direction you want to go. I'm going to create the option for you to edit and or copy these sheets. So let me put it in the chat. All right, so I've got 3 different activities that you can engage in right now. You can create a plan to give feedback to your students. You can construct an activity to gather feedback from your students, or you can explore the assessment settings that make sense for you in your course to increase flexibility when it comes to assessment. And again, we've got some Google Docs. The first 3 are everybody gets to edit them. And the second 3 are you can make a blank copy for yourself so that you can take it home and think about it later. Now we do have enough time with around 12 minutes if folks wanted to jump into breakout rooms, but then that would mean we wouldn't have a lot of time for wrap up and Q&A. So I'm more inclined to have people work on their own in these Google Docs for a few minutes, get some ideas together, see what other people are generating, and then we'll spend maybe the last 5 minutes just doing Q&A. How's that sound? I see some nodding heads. I appreciate that. Troy gets us started. I've used quick surveys asking students to track their time doing assignments and their opinion as to the value for the effort. Amazing how some activities required a lot more time for them than I imagined. I made changes in future classes. That's perfect. I like to imagine my students as though they're working for me and I'm paying them $30 an hour to do the work I give them. So was it a good investment? If they were my employees, would I have them do this? That's a great strategy, Troy. And some students may drag their feet to earn an extra $30. I'm just saying, may go make a sandwich, come back. Took me 2 hours, teacher. Victoria is proving that the chat is yet again a resource for everyone. And like I did last time, I'll go through the chat at the end and pop in Slack all of the ideas that were shared that are stuff that we want to keep talking about or make sure everybody sees. Especially for our friends who are asynchronous and weren't able to join us today. We want to make sure they know what happened and they can learn from each of you as well. Takia says, I worked with someone who would have students tweet their summary of the lectures. Besides all of the connectivist use of this activity, the constraints required to fit the meaning into a tweet was excellent and authentic. Lalita, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, I have a question. I am not able to edit the Google form for some reason. Maybe we have 2 email addresses in Fresno State.
So, you shouldn't need an email address. It's anyone with the link can edit. So the first 3 were the versions that you're allowed to edit. And the second 3, let me just make sure. I'm going to go and just reset the settings just to make sure. Just click on edit. Okay, now Lalita, try again and let me know if that worked. I just changed them to view and back to edit and see if that worked. And you may need to close the page and reopen it.
Thank you. I am able to.
Excellent.
Thanks.
If it happened to you, it probably happened to other people too. There are a lot of moving parts to this institute, so if some of them need a little grease to move a little more smoothly, I don't mind hearing about it.
Hey, Kevin, it's Leslie. I have been really amazed at how smoothly things have been running. So don't have a lot of input in that regard. So, and your follow-ups and the activities in the Slack have been great from all of you all. So hopefully this is a beneficial experience. I can imagine it would be. So let us know. And well done.
I can make an announcement for those who didn't catch it in Slack. We have created a IMS Global Course Cartridge. So if you are one of the folks on your campus who want a copy of the entire institute, we'll call this the beta version because we don't have the videos for modules 2, 3, and 4 embedded yet because we're producing them as we speak. But some people just raring, ready to go. They want to get started. So we put that together and I will make sure the link is in the course. It's already in Slack and I'll send it out by email so that people can check it out. Dennis wants to know the link to get to the Slack. It is on the home page of the Canvas course, but I will go find it and pop it in the chat as well. And the reason we're doing Slack, for those of you who may not have had a chance to watch the Module 0 videos, is so that we can continue this community and working together once we've finished the workshops. We know that just learning about something isn't the end. We have to go back to our campuses and put it into practice, right? And so we want this to be a community where we can ask questions all summer long. From the beach if you have to. I see Malcolm's got the Go Beach on his background, so it made me think that it's not just Long Beach, it could be just the sandy beach. But it's a beautiful sunny day there. If that's any indication of what it's like on your campus, I'm going to have to visit again soon. Any questions? We've got about 4 minutes left and I'm happy to stay a little bit longer, but again, it could be considered a fire hydrant that's unleashing the water on the street or just a yummy buffet, but we covered a lot of ideas in 90 minutes and I want to make sure there's time to unpack it all. And you might need some time to take it home and ask questions on Slack, which is fine, but some of you may have some questions now. So ask away. Well,
I guess oh, really fast, I wanted to mention in case, because we've had a few folks join in the last day. So if you're not in the course, let us know and we'll add you. Shady, who's here, will add you.
And I'll put my email in the chat so people can reach out if they need. And thanks to something I saw from my colleagues at Cal State LA, I am working on a playlist on Spotify related to flexibility and course experience. So you can imagine how interesting it's going to be, eclectic to say the least. But I will be putting up a Slack channel called playlist so that you all can share your suggestions about songs that inspire you to be more flexible. It is summertime. We can't be all work and no play, right? I'm going to pop open some of those Google Docs and see if that's where everybody's attention is. If so, I want to know what's going on. Yeah, I see some people starting to write in there. Okay, well, with 1 minute left, and I know you all are probably off to more meetings and everything, so I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. I will send out some updates like I have been doing, so you know when the recordings are ready, when you can tell your asynchronous colleagues who couldn't be here today that it's time to go check it out. And we'll be back again next Tuesday at 10 a.m. for those of you who can join either in person at my house or on Zoom. Thanks for the great ideas in the chat, and we'll see you online.